And let me share my screen. There we go. And make it a little bit bigger. So we're on the bottom of page 79, Avodah Zarah, page 15b, as we continue our discussion about what we can sell to Gentiles. So we had Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we had a little bit of a tangent about weapons. Can you sell? Just one second, somebody else coming in. Can we sell weapons to Gentiles? So it depends, especially if the Gentile, and then we'll get back to selling weapons to Gentiles, but then into what about to Jews? Can you sell weapons to Jews? Well, if the Jew is only a bandit, but not an armed robber, then it's okay. Whether there's going to be any other place in the Gemara to talk about that, like how can you trust selling to a bandit that the bandit is not going to be using the weapon, for offensive reasons, rather just defensive reasons? That's right. That's what this paragraph, the one before the S where we left off, was pointing out. If he is a bandit who does not kill, why not sell to him? The Gemara answers, actually, Rav Dimi Bar Abba is referring to a bandit who does not kill, and here we're dealing with a bandit who steals, as sometimes he makes use of his weapon to save himself when he's caught. Consequently, it's prohibited to sell him weapons in case he kills with them in self-defense. Right, so you want to be sure that the weapon that you're selling to somebody is to the person who is a trustworthy person. All right, so let's continue this discussion here. The sages taught one may not sell shields to Gentiles, despite the fact that they are used for protection, not to attack others. Right, so here is. Just one second. Here is a picture of a medieval army holding up shields here. So you can't kill anybody with the shield, and the purpose of it is to protect yourself. So what's wrong with selling Gentiles a shield? And some say one may sell shields to them. The Gemara asks, what's the reason behind the opinion that prohibits selling shields to Gentiles? If we say it's because they protect them in wartime, if so, then even wheat and barley should not be sold to them. So let me stop there for a second. That we don't sell shields to Gentiles because it protects them in wartime. So the idea being that the idea being that we want Gentiles to die. we don't this, at least in the view of the Gemara rabbis, where they're living at a time when Gentiles weren't so nice to the Jewish people. Still memories, even though it's several hundred years already by the time of the rabbis in the Gemara, still the memory is fresh of the Roman Gentiles destroying the temple in Jerusalem and sending Jews in, putting Jews into slavery and whatnot. And so there haven't been, in the rabbis' time, positive relations with Gentile governments. So anything that would thwart the advancement of Gentiles should be promoted. So not selling shields to them is a way to ensure that let them find their protection from some other place. Jewish people should not be protecting Gentiles. Okay, so it's an interesting idea. and one that still, depending on which segment of the Jewish community one is part of today, is still um, is still relevant. Um, it's certainly a perspective in Israeli society vis-a-vis the Palestinians and also Israeli Arabs. There's just this inherent um, inherent um, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Inherent distrust of the other. Okay, and it's a shame. We understand historically from context what this is all about. We can understand, why would you want to sell anything to the Romans when the Romans just destroyed your people? Right? And the heart of of Judaism. Why would we want to do anything with them? Which gets to that last line. If the reason not to sell shields to Gentiles is that it will protect them, then the question is a logical question. Why are we even allowed to sell wheat and barley? Right? So we shouldn't be doing anything with the Gentiles that should help them in any way. It's not just about idol worship, it's about maintaining the Gentile society. Why should Jewish people be involved in any way in helping, aiding, and abetting Gentiles? That's what this question is. So on to the next page, 80. Rav said, if it were possible to avoid selling produce to Gentiles without incurring their animosity, indeed it would be prohibited to sell them, since limiting sales to Gentiles to such an extent would cause great harm. It's only prohibited to sell them shields. Right? So we have to, in other words, all things being equal, and it wouldn't affect society in any way, no, we shouldn't be doing business with Gentiles at all. But since all things are not equal, and it would cause great animosity if we restricted sales only to Jews, then we have no choice. But there are certain things, even in that circumstance, that we are prohibited. Anything that back to the idol worship idea, that even if it might cause animosity, we're not supposed to encourage idol worship. Okay, there are those who say, with regard to shields, that this is the reason that one is not allowed to sell them to Gentiles, as when their use of their weapon is finished in battle, they kill with these shields. And accordingly, the reason that some say in the Baraita that one may sell shields to them is because they maintain that this is not a concern, as when their weapon is finished, they flee, rather than use their shield as a weapon. Rav Nachman says, the Rabbah Bar Avu says, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion cited as some say. That is, there are those who say, so I guess so the reason you're not allowed to sell shields to Gentiles is that when their weapon is done, then right. So imagine I don't know if you ever watched Game of Thrones and battle scenes in Game of Thrones, or any other kind of medieval battle scene in any kind of movie that you may have watched. You have a spear or a sword, and if the sword breaks, or it gets stuck inside of the body that you just killed and you can't take it out, then you got nothing left, if the battle is still raging around you, other than your shield to protect you, and possibly your shield to be used as a weapon. So in that case, then the shield does become a weapon, and you're not allowed to sell it, as opposed to a rabbi, uh, uh, as opposed to this other opinion that when their weapon is finished, they run away. So it's interesting that the rabbis have a little bit of a sense of what happens in war with Gentiles with each other, but they're not exactly. Maybe some soldiers do run away, and other soldiers continue bravely using whatever is at hand. Okay, so we go on. Rav Ada bar Ahava says, one may not sell blocks of iron to Gentiles. What is the reason? It is because they forge weapons from them. The Gemara asks, if so, then even hoes and axes should not be sold to them, as they too can be used to forge weapons. Rav Zevid said in response, the ruling of Rav Ada bar Ahava was stated with regard to Indian iron, which is of a superior quality and used only for crafting weapons. The Gemara clarifies, and as for the fact that nowadays we do sell all weapons, Rav Ashi said we sell the weapons to the Persians who protect us. Okay, so again, remember Rav Ashi is the last generation of rabbis. He's the editor of the Gemara. So when we get to Rav Ashi, we know we're at the end of the discussion. So he says nowadays, right? So we're talking the discussion from a couple hundred years before that maybe it wasn't appropriate to sell, but now it's okay because you're selling to the empire that's protecting you. So it's perhaps the weapons can be turned against us, but we are our safety and our welfare is dependent upon the Persian Empire in which we're living. And so he says it's okay to sell weapons of all kinds, not just shields, to Persians. Arnie, did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say how much things changed. Persians are not so great anymore.
Yeah, and right. It's interesting. Jews who hail from Iran call themselves Persians because the time of the Shah was a good time to be Jewish. The reign of the Shah may have been corrupt, but El Al used to fly to Tehran when the Shah was ruling in Iran, and you could visit Iran as a Jew, and it would be not be a problem. And Jewish life in Iran was pretty good until 1979. So so the Jews who left at that time still call themselves Persians, not Iranians. Yeah. Okay, so we go on. The Mishnah teaches one may not sell to Gentiles calves or foals. It's taught in a Baraita that Rabbi Yehuda permits the sale of a damaged animal because it's incapable of being cured and living normally. That is, an animal that could be used for sacrifice to an idol, you're not supposed to sell. But if it's damaged, it's okay because you can't sacrifice a damaged animal. The sages said to him, but if one mates her, does she not bear offspring? And since one can mate her, and she will bear offspring, the Gentile will come to leave her in his possession, and Jews who see the animal in the possession of the Gentile will assume that it's permitted to sell large livestock to Gentiles. Rabbi Yehuda said to them in response, when she bears offspring, I will agree to be concerned about such a possibility. Okay, so in other words, you can't legislate for such an end result that you have no idea if that's going to happen or not. We're legislating about what's happening now, not something that could happen 5 years from now as a result of something that you're doing now. Okay, so that's an interesting halachic concept. Rabbi Yehuda is saying our laws are based on transactions that happen now, not on possible results of the transaction that may or may not happen several years down the line. Okay, so that's Yehuda's uh, halachic principle. The halacha applies to what we're doing in this particular transaction only. Okay, so apparently, Rav Yehuda holds that a damaged animal does not accept a male. That is, since its legs are broken, it cannot participate in intercourse. Or maybe this is what Yehuda is saying, that, damaged animals, uh, uh, no animal wants to mate a damaged animal. So I don't know if that is if that is correct or not, but the rabbis certainly were more agriculturally inclined than we are today, and maybe they knew more. The Mishnah also teaches that Ben Betera permits the sale of a horse to a Gentile. The Gemara notes that it is taught in a Baraita. Ben Betera permits the sale of a horse because the Gentile uses it for performing an act for which one is not liable to bring a sin offering, as riding a horse is not prohibited by Torah law. That is, in other words, remember the Mishnah was concerned about selling animals to Gentiles that may be used on Shabbat, right? So it wasn't just about idol worship, it was about making sure the animal doesn't work on Shabbat. And riding a horse is not prohibited in the Torah, it's a rabbinic prohibition, not a Torah prohibition. So therefore, selling a horse to a Gentile is okay because you're not violating Torah law. Therefore, there is no reason to prohibit its sale due to the concern that the Gentile might use it for a prohibited action. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi prohibits a sale due to two reasons. One is because it has the status of a weapon, as horses are used in battle, and the other one is because it has the status of larger livestock, right? So a horse can be a weapon of war, right? Riding it into battle, and it's also considered large livestock. So Yehuda says no to selling horses. The Gemara granted there is a reason to say that a horse has the status of a weapon, as a horse is taught to kill by striking down enemy troops. But what? So the note says the horses are trained to do this with their hooves. But what is the relevance of the observation that it has the status of large livestock? It has already been explained that a horse is used for riding, not for performing acts that are prohibited on Shabbat. In other words, other large livestock are used to work the fields, right? Pull a plow, things like that. Horses aren't used for that. Apparently in their time, it's just for riding, and riding is okay on Shabbat according to the Torah. Rav Yochanan says when it becomes elderly and is no longer suitable for use in battle, one makes it grind with a millstone, and therefore it will in fact be used to perform prohibited labor on Shabbat, right? When it's too old to carry a soldier into battle, then, well, yeah, it can still be used for pulling the millstone. So you have to I only know what this is like because I've been to this reenacted biblical village outside of Jerusalem called Neot Kedumim. So they have like an olive press there, which has a circular trough made of stone and a wheel sitting on top of it, also of stone. Right? So picture a wheel upright, and with a big piece of wood through the hole that goes in the middle of that wheel. And that piece of wood is long enough that you can push it so that the stone wheel, is going around the trough. So you put the olives in there, and the weight of the stone wheel crushes the olives, and allows the oil to come through. So the stone wheel is really heavy. A person could do it, I guess. You could have a slave do that, or a few slaves do that, or you can have an animal pull it. And that's you'd use possibly a horse to pull this millstone around that mill to press the olives or grind the wheat or whatever else you're doing. Um, so one might, and therefore it will not affect. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yochanan says the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Ben Betera, and it is permitted to sell a horse to Gentiles. So the idea of, again, when it's getting older, and so but you're not concerned about what's going to happen to it when it gets older. You're selling it now when it's healthy. So they say you're allowed to sell a horse. A dilemma was raised before the sages with regard to an ox of a fattener, which has been fattened for slaughter. What is the halacha? So let's just look at the note here. Ox of a fattener. Some commentaries explain that this is referring to a fattened cow and the possession of a fattener, which, due to its large size, is entirely unsuited for laboring. Others explain that the reference is to an ox that is designated for fattening, but at the moment is still slim. Consequently, the concern is that while the animal is in the possession of a Gentile, it will be used to perform labor. Okay, so the dilemma, so with regard to an ox of a fattener, which has been fattened for slaughter, what's the halacha? Let the dilemma be raised according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who permits the sale of a damaged animal, and let the dilemma be raised according to the opinion of the rabbis, who dispute that ruling. Right? So you're selling an animal now, but you're selling it to a fattener, and you know that even though your animal is not fat now, the fattener is going to fatten it. So you are concerned about something that's happening down the road and not something immediate. So then what are you supposed to do? Well, maybe you're not supposed to be concerned about it because you're only concerned about now, or maybe you are supposed to be concerned about it because the guy is a fattener. He buys animals to fatten them up for slaughter. So the Gemara elaborates. Let the dilemma be raised according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda as follows. Perhaps Rabbi Yehuda permits only the sale of a damaged animal, which will never come to be included in the category of an animal that is fit for labor. But with regard to this fattened ox, which, if kept for a sufficient amount of time without fattening, will come to be included in the category of an animal that is fit for labor, the sale is prohibited. Or perhaps it may be claimed that even according to the rabbis, they prohibit the sale only there in the case of a damaged animal that ordinarily does not stand ready for slaughter. But in this case of a fattened ox, which ordinarily stands ready for slaughter, even the rabbis permit the sale. The Gemara suggests a proof. Come and hear that which Rav Yehuda says, that Shmuel says. The members of the household of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi were required to bring as a present for the authorities an ox of a fattener on their festival day. So Yehuda Nasi's family were supposed to bring a present for the Roman authorities, that's the authorities here, a fattened ox on their festival day, right? So you're not supposed to do business with Gentiles on their festival day, right? Because we know that's going to be used for idol worship. But here they're forced to do it. They deprived themselves of 40,000 dinars, that is, they paid this sum as a bribe to ensure that they would not have to bring it on the actual day of their festival, but rather on the next day, right? It was better for them to pay this exorbitant bribe rather than do business with them and have this animal be used for idol worship. Okay? They deprived themselves again. That is, they paid a further bribe of another 40,000 dinars to ensure that they would not have to bring it alive, but rather slaughtered. They deprived themselves again and paid yet another bribe of 40,000 dinars to ensure that they would not have to bring it at all. So, according to this story, this is crazy, 120,000 dinars in order not to bring an animal at all. Okay? So, what is the reason that they paid a bribe to evade the responsibility of bringing a fattened ox to the authorities? Is it not due to the concern that perhaps they will come to keep the animal until it is fit for labor? The Gemara rejects this proof, and according to your reasoning, what's the reason that they paid a bribe to ensure that they would not have to bring it on the day of the festival, but rather the next day? Rather, it must be explained that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wanted to abolish the matter entirely, and he reasoned it's best to abolish it gradually, little by little, and in this manner they ultimately had no obligation to bring the animal at all. Therefore, no proof can be brought from this incident with regard to the halacha of the sale of a fattened ox. Right? So, in other words, don't use this story to prove that you want to avoid the sale, but rather it's just to slowly get out of it. Okay, it was stated that yeah, Arnie, do you have a question?
I'm just puzzled at the logic there. I mean, who's getting this bribe?
The Yeah, somebody in the Roman governor of Palestine at the time. Somebody, whether it's the tax authority or whether it's the governor himself. There are a number of statements in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, about Yehuda Hanasi's relationship with the Roman governor in Palestine at the time. So remember, he's living about 200 CE. I don't know who the Roman governor was, and I don't know if these stories are true, but the idea in the time of Yehuda Hanasi was that he had, as the leader of the Jewish community in the land of Israel, it might seem logical that he would have a relationship with the Roman governor. That the Roman governor, in order to maintain peace or whatever, would meet regularly with the leader of the Jewish community. You can imagine that could happen,
So
but of
they're
course,
condoning the process of bribing the government.
in order to get out of having the government use your Jewish property for something that goes against Torah law.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's yeah, so that's the idea that if you have you can't sell it. So you want to get out of it, so you might have to pray. There's so many stories throughout Jewish history of the ransoms that Jewish communities had to pay in order to get people out of captivity, the exorbitant bribes that they paid in order to get out of certain taxes, or to have Jews be conscripted into the army. I mean, this was just something 150 years ago in Russia. Why did lots of Jews leave Russia? It's not just because of the pogroms, it was because of conscription, and conscription into the Russian army meant being in the army for 25 years. So they would take Jewish kids at 12 or 13, and these kids would forget about what it means to be Jewish because they were totally Russian. And what choice did Jews have but to bribe their way out of kids going into the army or leaving Russia? So so the idea of bribing to get out of things, to save your life, and also not to violate Jewish law is tragically something part of Jewish history. So it was stated that if a fattened ox is kept for a sufficient amount of time without fattening, it will come to be included in a category of an animal that is fit for labor. Concerning this, the Gemara asks, but even when a fattened ox is kept until it is slim, does it become healthy and able to perform labor? Rav Ashi said that the expert in this matter, Zevida, said to me, we keep a young ox that has been fattened until it is slim, and it performs twice the work of other oxen. So you fatten the ox, and then you make it go on a diet. It becomes an even stronger ox. Okay, new Mishnah. One may not sell bears or lions or any item that can cause injury to the public to Gentiles. One may not build with them a basilica, a tribunal, a stadium, or a platform, but one may build with them small platforms and bathhouses. Even in this case, once he reaches the arched chamber in the bath where the Gentiles put up objects of idol worship, it is prohibited to build it. Okay, so fascinating here. You know, if you're in the building trades, it's the Roman authorities that are going to provide all the infrastructure that you're building. But you know, it's not the Jew. You're not. Maybe you'll build a barn for a Jew, but in the land of Israel or in the Persian Empire, it's the empire that determines the building contracts, not the individual little villages. So if you're going to make a living, you even have to restrict what you're going to be building. You can't build a basilica or a court or a stadium. This is where idol worship happens, where gladiator events happens, things like that. But small platforms and bathhouses is okay. And we know that the rabbis and therefore the rest of the Jewish community did go to the bathhouse, and they used the bathhouse regularly. So that is okay, but other things like for the circus and for gladiator purposes you can't do. So the Gemara, Rav Chanin bar Rav Chisda says, and some say Rav Chanan bar Rava says, that Rav says, the status of a large beast is like that of small livestock with regard to a spasm. That is, the symptoms of vitality required at the time of slaughtering. If an animal in danger of dying was slaughtered, but did not display any spasmodic movement when it is slaughtered, it is not kosher. If it did spasm after being slaughtered, its meat is kosher. But its status is not the same as that of a small livestock with regard to its sale. Rather, it's considered like large livestock, and therefore its sale to Gentiles is always prohibited. Okay, so I'm not up on the laws of ritual slaughter, shechita, as it's called in Hebrew. So I don't know about this idea of an animal. I guess after you slit its throat, it's supposed to naturally spasm. And if it doesn't, I guess there's something wrong with it and it makes it not fit for use. So what Michael is saying, oh, yes, I know all about this.
My father said he remembers learning when he was a little kid. His Malamed was also a shochet.
Ah, okay.
And sometimes a woman would come to the back door
With a chicken.
with a chicken, and
Yeah.
he'd tell them to review, and he'd go back and shech the chicken, and he said you could hear the chicken sort of
right.
moving around in the funnel, just spasmodic,
Right, without the head. Right,
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess not just chickens, but cows would do this too. So therefore, then, but its status, the small livestock, the status is with regard to rather, it's considered like small livestock is considered like large livestock, and therefore its sale to Gentiles always prohibited. I'm just looking at the side here. Okay. You can look on your own later about see all these pictures of these different things that these different kinds of buildings that came up. And Rav Hanan bar Rava added, this is a statement of Rav, but I say that even with regard to its sale, a large beast is akin to small livestock. Therefore, in a place where the people were accustomed to sell large beasts, one may sell them, and in a place where the people were not accustomed to sell them, one may not sell them. All right, so we leave it to the practice of the place. If we can't say in broad strokes that something's prohibited or permitted. It's up to the custom of the place here. The Gemara raises an objection to Rav's statement. We learned in the Mishnah one may not sell bears or lions or any item that can cause injury to the public. To Gentiles, the Gemara analyzes the Mishnah. The reason that these beasts cannot be sold to Gentiles is because they can cause injury to the public. It may be inferred from here that another beast which does not cause injury to the public is permitted to be sold to Gentiles. Rabba Bar Ula says in response, this Mishnah does not pose a problem for Rav, as he holds that it is referring to a damaged lion which is not fit for labor. And this is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah on 14b above, that it is permitted to sell to a Gentile large livestock that are damaged. Yet it is prohibited to sell large undamaged beasts, just as one may not sell large undamaged livestock. Rav Ashi says it's not necessary to explain that the Mishnah is referring to such a specific case. Rather, an ordinary lion is considered damaged with regard to labor, as lions are not generally used to perform labor. Therefore, there's no concern that a lion will be used to perform prohibited labor on Shabbat. Okay, so it's just, but you still, the question still stands. Lions are dangerous animals, and are you allowed to sell dangerous animals at all? Okay, yes, Arnie.
Well, I'm wondering what kind of lions that where are we talking about?
Oh, there were lions. There were lions in Israel, and there were lions throughout the Middle East. It's not common.
They still are?
No, there aren't anymore. But there used to be. Definitely, there used to be. Why is Judah referred to a lion? And other tribes of Israel are referred to animals. They're referred to animals because these animals existed, and the rabbis knew what they looked like. Right? There's no tribe of Israel that's compared to a panda bear or to a jaguar, because those animals did not exist in the land of Israel. So lions must have, bears also. Bears in the mountains outside of Haifa today in northern Israel. Absolutely, there were bears there. Now, the whole ecosystem of the land of Israel has changed. It used to be a much more forested, verdant land. And as a result of wars over the centuries, these trees were cut down, etc., and it became more of a wilderness as it is today. But some animals and birds are coming back thanks to J&F reforestation. There are wild boars in the forests also outside of Haifa that might have maybe 100 years ago not been so much there. So the reforestation is bringing animals back. I don't think lions will be coming back anytime, or bears, but yeah, I think further up in Syria there might be bears there, but there are no lions, as far as I know, anymore in the Middle East. You have to go to Africa for the lions. Okay. So here we are. The Gemara raises an objection from a Baraita. Just as one may not sell large livestock to Gentiles, so too one may not sell large beasts to them. And even in a place where the people were accustomed to sell small livestock to Gentiles, nevertheless, one may not sell large beasts to them. The Gemara concludes the refutation of the opinion of Rav Hanan bar Rava is a conclusive refutation. The Gemara presents a different version of this discussion. Ravina raises a contradiction between the Mishnah here and a Baraita and resolves the contradiction. We learned in the Mishnah one may not sell bears or lions or any item that can cause injury to the public to Gentiles. Ravina analyzes the Mishnah. The reason a beast, such as a lion, cannot be sold to Gentiles is that it can cause injury to the public, from which it may be inferred that with regard to another beast, which does not cause injury to the public, one may sell it to Gentiles. And Ravina raises a contradiction from a Baraita. Just as one may not sell large livestock to Gentiles, so too one may not sell large beasts to them. And even in a place where the people were accustomed to sell small livestock to Gentiles, one may not sell large beasts to them. So what is it? Large livestock that doesn't cause injury you can sell, or large livestock you're not allowed to sell? Which position is it? Are you allowed to sell? You're not allowed to sell. The Baraita indicates that one may never sell large beasts to Gentiles, even if it poses no danger to the public. And Ravina resolves the contradiction between the Mishnah and the Baraita. The ruling of the Mishnah stated with regard to a damaged lion in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Ashi says there's a different explanation. An ordinary lion is considered damaged with regard to labor. Right? So you don't have to worry about it being used for working your fields, so it's okay. So some say it's okay, some say it's not okay. Rav Nachman objects to the inference drawn from the Mishnah. Who will tell us that a lion is considered a large beast? Perhaps it's considered a small beast, in which case it cannot be inferred that the Mishnah permits the sale of large beasts. The Gemara explains, Rav Ashi examined the Mishnah here carefully, and from it he raises a refutation of the opinion of Rav Hanan bar Rava, who permitted the sale of large beasts. We learned in the Mishnah one may not sell bears or lions or any item that can cause injury to the public to Gentiles. Rav Ashi inferred two conclusions from here. First, the reason a beast, such as a lion, cannot be sold to Gentiles is because it can cause injury to the public. Whereas with regard to a beast that does not cause injury to the public, one may sell it to Gentiles. This inference was cited in contradiction of the opinion of Rav, as explained before. So Rav, by the way, lived 400 years before Rav Ashi. So by the time of Rav Ashi, large livestock that cannot cause injury to the public, it's okay to sell. If it causes injury to the public, it's not okay to sell. And Rav Ashi then inferred in resolution of Rav's opinion that the reason the Mishnah specifies that one may sell a lion if it does not pose a danger to the public is that an ordinary lion is considered damaged with regard to labor. But a different animal that performs labor may not be sold. This presents a difficulty to the opinion of Rav Hanan bar Rava. The Gemara concludes the refutation of the opinion of Rav Hanan bar Rava is a conclusive refutation. The Gemara asks, but in any event, what labor can a large beast perform? Why is it necessary to prohibit the sale of large beasts if they are not trained to perform any labor? Abaye said, Mar Yehuda said to me that in the house of Mar Yochani, they grind the mill with wild asses, which are considered large beasts. So whether they're large or not, if they're used for labor, then you're not allowed to sell such an animal to a Gentile because they could be used on Shabbat. So we're at a red S. It's just about 10:15, and I have to get ready for a meeting that I have in a few minutes. So we're going to stop here for today. We will meet next week, which is Super Bowl Sunday. But the following Sunday, we will not meet. I have a wedding that Saturday night, and it's President's Weekend, and the wedding is in Baltimore, and because of the President's Weekend, Lenore and I are going to be staying overnight. So so no class on President's Day weekend. So, but I'll send that in the email with this recording. I hope everybody has a good rest of the day, and enjoy the balmy weather that we're going to be having.
You too. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Take care.